Groovy English podcast.
Hey there! Welcome back to Groovy English. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Aiden. We share real stories, useful tips, and everyday English to help you grow with confidence.
Wherever you are in your English learning journey, we're glad you're here.
If you're enjoying the podcast, feel free to like, subscribe, or share it with a friend.
Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to Groovy English, the podcast that helps you grow your confidence, find your voice, and enjoy the ride as you learn English. I'm your host, Olivia. Today, I want to share something a little different, something personal but powerful, what I've learned from talking to strangers. Maybe you felt nervous, shy, or even scared about starting conversations in English, especially with people you don't know. I get it. I've been there too. But talking to strangers, real people from different places with different stories, has changed my English and my life in ways I never expected. So today, I'll take you through my journey of talking to strangers, what I learned from those moments, the surprises, the mistakes, and the breakthroughs. And hopefully, by the end of this episode, you'll feel inspired to step out of your comfort zone and start your own conversations, no matter where you are or how confident you feel. Let me start by telling you how it all began for me. When I first started learning English, I focused on textbooks, grammar rules, and listening to podcasts like this one. I thought learning meant sitting quietly and memorizing. But somewhere along the way, I realized that language is really about connection. It's about people. And to really learn English, I had to talk to people. The first time I talked to a stranger in English was terrifying. I remember it clearly. I was at a cafe and I overheard someone speaking English. I gathered all my courage and said, "Hi, do you mind if I practice English with you?" They smiled and said yes. That 5-minute conversation felt like climbing a mountain. I stumbled over words, forgot grammar, and felt self-conscious. But it was thrilling. From that day on, I started looking for opportunities to talk to strangers, even if it was just a quick chat. Sometimes it was at the grocery store, other times on the bus or waiting in line. Each conversation was a little adventure, a chance to learn and practice. One big lesson I learned is that people are generally kind and patient. When you show that you're trying to speak their language, most people will encourage you. They'll smile, repeat what they said, or help you find the right word. This kindness made me realize English is not just a language, it's a bridge between hearts. Talking to strangers also taught me to listen better. When you don't know someone, you pay more attention to their words, their tone, and their body language. You learn to read between the lines. I started noticing things like slang, idioms, and expressions that textbooks never taught me. That helped me sound more natural and confident. Another surprise was how much I learned about different cultures. Every stranger I talked to had a unique story. Sometimes we talked about food, sometimes about music, or even life challenges. It made me appreciate diversity and made English feel alive, not just a school subject. Of course, not every conversation went smoothly. Sometimes I didn't understand, or I got embarrassed. Once I accidentally used the wrong word, and the person laughed, not in a mean way, but it made me feel small. But I learned not to be afraid of mistakes. In fact, mistakes became my best teachers. Talking to strangers also improved my thinking speed. When you have no script and no preparation, you have to process and respond quickly. That helped me stop translating in my head and start thinking in English. It's like training your brain to be flexible. I've found that small talk is actually a huge skill. Saying, "How are you?" or "Nice weather today" might seem simple, but it's the doorway to deeper conversations. Small talk helped me build confidence step by step until I was ready for longer chats. One thing that really helped was asking questions. People love talking about themselves. So I learned to ask open-ended questions like, "Where are you from?" or "What do you like to do for fun?" This not only made conversations flow, but also gave me more vocabulary and new ideas. Sometimes I found it hard to keep the conversation going. There were awkward pauses and silences. But I learned that it's okay. Silence is natural in any conversation, and it gives you time to think. I stopped rushing and started to enjoy those quiet moments. What really surprised me was how talking to strangers changed my attitude toward English. It wasn't just a subject to study, it became a tool to connect, explore, and grow. I started looking forward to conversations instead of fearing them. I also learned to be more patient with myself. Fluency doesn't happen overnight. Every stranger I talked to was a chance to improve a little, to practice a little, to take one more step. Progress is about showing up, not being perfect. One powerful moment for me was when a stranger told me, "Your English is really good." That little compliment gave me a huge boost of confidence. It reminded me that speaking English is about courage, not perfection. Talking to strangers taught me to embrace curiosity. Instead of worrying about mistakes, I focused on learning about people's lives, cultures, and ideas. Curiosity made me a better learner and a better communicator. I also realized that my accent is part of my identity, and that's okay. I don't have to sound like a native speaker to be understood or valued. My unique voice adds to the richness of the conversation. Another lesson was the importance of being genuine. People respond better when you're sincere. So I stopped trying to sound perfect and started being myself, even if that meant making mistakes or asking for help. Over time, I noticed something amazing. Conversations with strangers became less scary and more fun. I started to enjoy the surprises, the unexpected stories, and the new words I picked up. English became a tool for friendship. I also discovered that talking to strangers opens doors. Some conversations led to invitations to events, study groups, or even job opportunities. Language became a key to new experiences. One time, I met someone from a country I had never visited, and we ended up exchanging emails and sharing photos. That stranger became a friend. And it all started with a simple hello. Through these experiences, I learned that talking to strangers is not just about English. It's about courage, connection, and stepping into the unknown. It's about breaking down walls and building bridges. So, if you're nervous about talking to strangers in English, I want to encourage you. Start small. Say hello to the cashier. Ask for directions. Compliment someone's outfit. Each little step is progress. Remember, every conversation, no matter how short, is practice. It's a chance to learn, grow, and connect. And it's okay to feel nervous. That means you're pushing yourself. You don't need to be perfect or fluent. You just need to be brave enough to try. And the more you try, the easier it gets. Promise me you'll give it a chance. Talking to strangers wasn't just about practicing my English. It was about practicing life skills. I learned how to listen actively, how to be curious, and how to hold space for someone else's story. Those skills helped me beyond language learning. Sometimes, I realized that talking to strangers helped me break free from my own fears and insecurities. When I focused on someone else, their story, their emotions, I forgot about my nervousness, even if only for a moment. One time, I was waiting for a bus and started chatting with an elderly man. He told me stories about his childhood, his travels, and the lessons he learned. It wasn't a perfect English conversation, but it was meaningful. I felt connected and alive. In these moments, I saw that the goal wasn't perfect grammar or pronunciation. It was connection. And that connection gave me the motivation to keep learning and trying. I also noticed that strangers sometimes offered perspectives I had never considered. Different cultures, beliefs, and experiences showed me how vast the world really is and how English is a tool that lets us explore it. Talking to strangers helped me develop empathy. When you hear someone's story, their struggles or joys, you start to see the world through their eyes. That changes how you speak, how you listen, and even how you think. There was a time when I had to ask for help finding a location in a foreign city. The woman I asked not only helped me but gave me directions in English I could understand. That small act made me realize how important clear communication is. From that moment, I started paying more attention to how people simplify their language when talking to learners. I learned to ask for clarification and to not be afraid to say, "Can you please say that again?" Talking to strangers also showed me the power of patience. Sometimes conversations moved slowly or I misunderstood. But with patience from me and from the other person, we created space to understand each other. I remember how some strangers would smile and encourage me just by listening carefully. That simple kindness gave me courage to try harder and speak more. Through talking to strangers, I learned that confidence isn't about knowing every word. It's about showing up, making mistakes, and trying again. At first, I felt embarrassed when I couldn't find the right word or when I made pronunciation errors. But I slowly learned to laugh at myself, to see those moments as funny stories rather than failures. There was one awkward conversation where I forgot a basic word. The stranger helped me with a smile, and we both laughed. That moment taught me not to fear mistakes. I realized that everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. It's part of learning and communicating as humans. As I talked more, I noticed I started thinking less about being perfect and more about being understood. That was a big shift. Talking to strangers also helped me develop better body language and nonverbal communication. Sometimes a smile or gesture helped bridge language gaps. One memorable conversation was with a taxi driver. We talked about music and food, and even though we didn't share many words, we connected through enthusiasm and laughter. That experience taught me that communication is more than words. It's feelings, expressions, and presence. Sometimes I realized I was too focused on my own mistakes instead of enjoying the moment. talking to strangers taught me to be present. Each new person I met gave me new ideas for vocabulary, slang, and expressions I hadn't heard before. That helped me sound more natural and less like a textbook robot. Talking to strangers also gave me practice with different English accents: British, American, Australian, and more. At first, I found it hard to understand some accents, but hearing them often helped me get used to the variety of English in the world. One time, I chatted with a tourist from Ireland. I didn't catch every word, but I enjoyed the rhythm and music of his speech. Those moments expanded my understanding of English beyond the classroom. I also noticed how talking to strangers helped me learn social cues and conversation flow: when to speak, when to listen, when to ask questions. Those are important skills in any language and any culture. It made me realize that learning English isn't just about words, it's about how we connect as people. Sometimes, talking to strangers felt like stepping into a little adventure. I never knew what the conversation would bring. I started feeling excited about the possibilities that each new chat could hold. Over time, I built a network of acquaintances, friends, and language partners just by being open and curious. Talking to strangers also gave me a sense of belonging in the global community. Even when I was far from home, English connected me to people everywhere. I began to see English not just as a skill, but as a way to understand humanity better. That motivated me to keep improving, no matter the challenges. I also learned that being vulnerable, admitting I don't know something, is a strength, not a weakness. Strangers often appreciated my honesty and helped me learn from my gaps. That taught me humility and patience in the learning process. Sometimes, conversations with strangers helped me rediscover joy in learning English. Instead of studying alone or feeling frustrated, I was sharing stories, laughing, and growing together. That made English feel less like work and more like friendship. I found that even small daily conversations, saying good morning to a neighbor or thank you to a shopkeeper, built my confidence. Those little moments add up. In fact, it's those small, consistent steps that make the biggest difference over time. So, talking to strangers taught me that learning English is really about connection, courage, and curiosity. It's about stepping outside your comfort zone and saying hello even when your heart races. It's about making mistakes and smiling anyway. And it's about celebrating every small victory along the way. Another important lesson I learned from talking to strangers is how to handle silence. At first, those quiet moments in conversation made me uncomfortable. I thought something was wrong or that I had failed. But over time, I realized silence is natural. It gives both people a moment to think, to breathe, and to feel more comfortable. I also discovered that asking open-ended questions opens up conversations in ways I hadn't imagined. Instead of just yes or no answers, people would share stories, opinions, and feelings. Questions like, "What do you like about this city?" or "How did you learn English?" led to deeper connections. Talking to strangers also helped me realize how much listening matters. Before, I was so focused on preparing what to say next that I wasn't really hearing the other person. But real connection happens when we truly listen. Sometimes I didn't understand everything, but I learned to listen for the main ideas or feelings behind words. That made conversations less scary and more enjoyable. I also found that body language and facial expressions say so much more than words. A smile, a nod, or a curious look can bridge gaps when words fail. One day, I was chatting with a vendor at a market. We couldn't fully understand each other, but we laughed a lot and helped each other anyway. That experience reminded me that connection is about kindness as much as language. Talking to strangers also helped me grow my emotional intelligence. I became more aware of how people express themselves, their moods, and their energy. This helped me respond more naturally and kindly. At first, I worried about saying the wrong thing or offending someone. But I learned that most people appreciate the effort and the willingness to learn, even if you don't get it perfect. Sometimes strangers became my teachers. They corrected me gently, gave me tips on pronunciation, or introduced me to new words and phrases. I started to enjoy these informal lessons because they came from real-life experience, not from a textbook. I also noticed how talking to strangers helped me break out of my comfort zone in other parts of life. It made me more confident in meetings, social gatherings, and public speaking. The more I practiced, the more I realized that English is a tool for courage. When you can express yourself, you can take more risks. One of the most surprising things I learned was that strangers often have interesting stories that challenge my assumptions. For example, I once met a man who had moved countries several times. Hearing about his journey made me appreciate my own path more and realize how resilient people can be. These conversations taught me humility and gratitude. Talking to strangers also helped me become more patient with others and myself. I learned that fluency doesn't come overnight, and every conversation is a step forward, no matter how small. Sometimes, the best conversations happened when I wasn't trying to study at all. Just being curious and kind opened doors to new friendships and cultural exchange. I also realized that learning English through strangers helped me develop a better memory for phrases and expressions because they were tied to real emotions and stories. That made vocabulary stick better than any flashcards. Another gift of talking to strangers was that it made English feel alive and relevant. I could see how people really use it, not just what's written in books. It was like discovering a secret language that connects people from all over the world. Sometimes I would reflect on the courage it took for strangers to talk to me, especially since I was still learning. That reminded me to be brave and kind in return. In fact, talking to strangers taught me more about kindness than I expected. Even a brief conversation could brighten someone's day, including mine. And that made me want to keep learning, not just for myself, but for the connections I could make. One of the biggest surprises was how much I enjoyed the unpredictability. You never know where a conversation will lead, what you'll learn, or who you'll meet. That sense of adventure kept me coming back. Talking to strangers also made me more adaptable. Each person has a different way of speaking, and I had to adjust and listen carefully. This flexibility helped me in other areas of life, too. I learned to appreciate silence, humor, stories, and questions, all different ways people connect. And I realized that English is not just words and grammar, but a bridge to the human experience. Some conversations were short, Some lasted hours, but each one added something valuable. They built my confidence, vocabulary, and my heart. When I look back, I see that talking to strangers was one of the best choices I made for my English journey. It made learning fun, unpredictable, and deeply human. And it's a practice I hope you'll try too, because there's a whole world of stories waiting to be shared. And every stranger you talk to is a new chapter in your own story. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope my stories and lessons about talking to strangers have inspired you to open your heart and your English to the world around you. Remember, every stranger is a potential friend, a teacher, and an opportunity. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who might need a little courage to start their own conversations. And don't forget to subscribe to Groovy English for more stories, tips, and encouragement to help you grow your English skills with joy and confidence. Until next time, keep talking, keep connecting, and keep it groovy.
Your English is shining brighter by the minute. Hit that next video to keep leveling up your skills. Or dive into our other episodes for more secrets to talk like a pro. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to join the Groovy English crew.